When you hear the word shawarma, you might think of spinning vertical spits, secret spice blends, and hours of work. But what if I told you that with a bit of advanced prep and a solid recipe, you could bring this Middle Eastern classic into your own kitchen and make it easy enough for a weeknight meal? Growing up in Turkey, I have had my share of incredible shawarma, and in this video I am sharing how to recreate that rich and flavorful experience at home. From a homemade spice mix to 3 creative ways to cook it, whether in the oven, on a vertical skewer pan, or with a fun makeshift skewer, this recipe will change the way you think about shawarma forever. Intrigued? Let's make chicken shawarma together. The secret to great shawarma is all in the seasoning. A good spice blend is where all that signature flavor comes to life, and I have 2 options to make it easy and flexible for you as possible. Whether you're looking for the authentic all-out experience or the ease of store-bought, we have something here for everyone. First up is my personal favorite, the authentic spice blend. This version uses a mix of classic Middle Eastern spices to create that deep, rich flavor you'll recognize from the best shawarma recipes. To make it into a small bowl, we'll add 1 teaspoon of ground cumin, 1 teaspoon of ground coriander, 1 teaspoon sweet paprika, 1 teaspoon garlic powder, 1 teaspoon black pepper, 1 teaspoon ground turmeric, half a teaspoon ground cloves, half a teaspoon ground cinnamon, half a teaspoon ground nutmeg, and half a teaspoon of ground cardamom. We'll mix them together and we're ready to go. This is as authentic as it gets, and I think it's the real deal. The second option, store-bought shawarma seasoning, is ideal if you're short on time or just don't want to mix spices. Lucky for us, there are some excellent brands out there. In preparation for this video, I purchased and tested a few of them. While they were all good with subtle differences, my favorite for the most authentic flavor is Sadaf's shawarma seasoning. It is bright with deep, rich flavors that I think really captures the essence of a great shawarma with that unmistakable Middle Eastern aroma. That said, you really can't go wrong with any of them. One thing to keep in mind when buying shawarma seasoning is whether or not it includes salt. You might have noticed I didn't add salt to my homemade spice blend. That's because I believe salt is such a key element in bringing out all flavors, and I prefer to adjust it to suit my taste. That's why I prefer a spice blend without salt, but if yours do, be sure to adjust the amount of salt you use later in the recipe accordingly. Also, if you're making your own seasoning, I recommend making a big batch. The recipe I shared earlier makes about 2 to 2.5 tablespoons, but since we're already gathering all those spices, why not make extra? Store it in a jar in a cool and dark place like your pantry, and it'll stay fresh for months. Not only will this make it easier to whip up chicken shawarma in no time, but you can also use it to add shawarma flavors to roasted veggies, sauteed dishes, or even crispy roasted chickpeas for snacking, which is my personal favorite. Moving on. Once we got our seasoning ready, the rest is just 10 to 15 minutes of hands-on work and super simple. First, we'll pat dry 2 pounds of chicken thighs with paper towels and sprinkle them with 1.5 teaspoons of kosher salt on both sides. I'm using dark meat here because, let's be honest, it's more flavorful, but if you're a chicken breast kind of person, that works too. Next, we'll transfer the chicken to a bowl and add the spice mixture we made earlier. If you're using a store-bought blend, you'll want about 2 to 2.5 tablespoons. Then we'll add 1/4 cup of freshly squeezed lemon juice, 1/4 cup of olive oil, and 2 cloves of minced garlic. To mix everything together, you can use kitchen tongs, or I'd like to get in there with my hands, whichever you prefer. The key is to make sure that each piece of chicken is fully coated with the marinade. We'll cover it up and let it marinate in the fridge for at least an hour, or even better, overnight. And here's a little pro tip. At this point, you can pop this chicken into a freezer bag and freeze it for later. The night before you're ready to serve, just thaw it overnight in the fridge and you'll have perfectly marinated, delicious meat ready to cook for dinner. It's the ultimate time saver if you ask me. Now, let's talk about cooking. Just like with any marinated meat, chicken shawarma can be cooked in the oven, on the stove, or on the grill. It's really no different than cooking any other chicken recipe. You've got options. For a weeknight dinner, I find the oven to be the easiest and most hands-off method. To cook in the oven, we'll first take the chicken out from the fridge and let it sit on the counter while we preheat the oven to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. Whenever I'm cooking chicken, I like to take it out and let it come closer to room temperature temperature rather than putting it in the oven while it's super cold, because this helps it cook more evenly. If the chicken is too cold, the outside can overcook before the inside is fully done, and we definitely don't want that. We'll transfer the chicken onto a sheet pan in a single layer and bake it in the oven for 18 to 20 minutes, or until a meat thermometer inserted into the thickest part of the chicken registers 165 degrees Fahrenheit. If you're like me, love a little browning on your shawarma, in the end, you can move the sheet pan to the top rack and broil the chicken for 2 to 3 minutes. Just keep a close eye on it. We want golden and caramelized, not burned. As you saw it, cooking it in the oven takes no more than 25 minutes and your weeknight dinner is ready. But when I have a little extra time, I like to bring out the big guns, aka my vertical skewer pan. It's an inexpensive tool and a game changer if you're serious about your shawarma. This pan isn't just for shawarma though. It's also popular for making al pastor, the Mexican dish inspired by shawarma. Lebanese immigrants introduced the vertical spit technique to Mexico in the early 1900s when they migrated and brought their culinary traditions with them. Over time, this method merged with local flavors like marinated pork and pineapple, giving us the iconic al pastor. Using a vertical skewer pan recreates the caramelized edges of its traditional spit, of course, along with the visual appeal, all in your home kitchen. The downside of it is that it takes longer to cook, for about an hour, 15 minutes to an hour and a half. To set it up, we'll start by assembling the pan. Mine comes with 3 different size skewers, and for 2 pounds of chicken, the smallest one is usually just right. Once it's secured, we'll thread the marinated chicken onto the skewer, stacking the pieces tightly and rotating each one as we go. This helps the stack hold together and ensures even cooking. If there's any marinade left in the bowl, we'll spoon it over the stack for an extra boost of flavor. Next, we'll pop it in the oven at 375 degrees Fahrenheit. Yes, we're using a slightly lower temperature this time. During my recipe testing, I found that the higher temperatures caused the outside of the chicken to brown too quickly before the inside was fully cooked. We'll let it cook for about an hour and 15 minutes to an hour and a half. About halfway through, we'll baste it with the juices from the bottom of the pan to keep the chicken moist and flavorful. Keep a close eye on it as it cooks and use a meat thermometer to check the doneness by inserting it into the middle of the stack. Once it registers 165 degrees Fahrenheit, your shawarma is good to go. Perfectly tender, golden, and caramelized chicken that is as close to the original version of this classic dish as you can get at home. Now, I can almost hear you say, do I really need to buy yet another gadget for this? Well, like with anything in life, there is a workaround, and in this case, it is as simple as using a good old onion and a skewer. This makeshift solution is not only fun, but surprisingly effective. To set it up, we'll cover a large baking sheet with aluminum foil and then a piece of parchment paper. I do double, both for cleaning, and I also know some people prefer not to use foil in their cooking. Though I do not recommend skipping the foil, as the long cooking time and all the juices from the chicken create a bit of a mess, so having a lining at the bottom makes the cleanup easier later on. Next, we'll take a large onion, cut it in half, and run a skewer through the flat side, creating a sturdy base. We'll transfer it onto the baking sheet and then thread the marinated chicken onto the skewer, just like we did earlier. Finally, we'll transfer the sheet pan to the oven and bake until the chicken is cooked through. Now, with this method, there are a few things to keep in mind. 1. Use a large onion. A strong base will help keep the chicken stack stable. 2. If you're using a wooden skewer, soak it in water for 30 minutes beforehand to prevent it from burning. 3. Don't overload the skewer. I recommend no more than 1.5 to 2 pounds of meat. If you have more, simply repeat the process using the other half of the onion. And keep in mind, it might tip over. During my tests, this happened once out of 3 tries, but even then the chicken cooked evenly and tasted fantastic. It is a simple and effective alternative that still delivers great results without needing any special equipment. Moving on, let's talk about serving chicken shawarma. When it comes to serving, the sky's the limit. For my family, I like to set it up buffet style. A big platter of chicken with a variety of condiments and, of course, pita bread on the side. This way, everyone can build their own shawarma pockets exactly the way they like them. If you want to follow my lead, here's how I set it up. Once the chicken comes out of the oven, I let it rest for about 5 minutes before slicing it thinly. Then I grab a large platter and place a small small board towards one end and fill it with tzatziki. Now I'm using tzatziki here, but if you're short on time, you can whip up my yogurt tahini sauce or my dill and yogurt sauce as well. I place the sliced chicken on the far end of the plate and then add more condiments like sliced tomatoes, sliced pickles, a traditional and essential addition, a few lemon wedges, and some thinly sliced curly greens. If I have the extra time, I also make a batch of my pita bread or buy some from the store to serve with my chicken shawarma. When it's time to assemble, here's what I do. Cut a pita in half, spread a spoonful of tzatziki at the bottom, add a small handful of greens, a slice of tomato, a few slices of chicken shawarma, and a pickle or two. Finish it with a squeeze of lemon juice and more tzatziki on top if you want. And just like that, you have got yourself a perfect shawarma pocket. If you can get your hands on lavash bread, another classic Middle Eastern bread, you can use it to make wraps instead. I've also seen people use flour tortillas for wraps. It's not traditional, but hey, do what works for you. Another option is to turn this into a meal prep friendly dish. I like to make a batch of my vermicelli rice and arrange it in meal prep containers with sliced tomatoes, cucumbers, curly greens, that chicken we made, pickles, and the drizzle of tzatziki. Just like that, you've got a satisfying, balanced meal ready to go for the week. And of course, during the summer months, I love firing up the grill to cook the chicken. There's nothing quite like that signature smoky flavor and those beautiful grill marks. If you'd like tips or directions on grilling chicken shawarma, you can find all the details and more about this recipe on my website, foolproofliving.com. Thank you for allowing me to share a part of what I grew up eating. Chicken shawarma is a dish that has truly stood the test of time, and for a good reason. It is flavorful, comforting, and endlessly versatile. I hope I have been able to simplify it enough for you to give it a try and treat your family to something special. If you want to try your hand on making beef shawarma, I've got that recipe on the blog as well. And if you'd like me to make a video for it, let me know in the comments. As always, thank you so much for watching. I will see you in my next video. We'll mix these. Hello. Oops. To mix everything together, you can use kitchen. I promise I'll get this done this time.